Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Joint Tele-Town Hall meeting of the SCEA and PSTA with the State Superintendent of Education, Molly Spearman. We have on the line today Sherry East, President of the SCEA, and Kathy Manus, Executive Director of the Palmetto State Teachers Association. It is their hope to engage a rich conversation this afternoon with Superintendent Spearman, who will answer some questions and concerns you have. We want this afternoon to be an interactive experience, so at any time you can press 9 to raise your hand to get in line and ask a question of the superintendent. Again, press 9 to raise your hand to ask a question. Let's get started. Let me introduce Kathy Manus, Executive Director of the Palmetto State Teachers Association. Kathy?
Thank you, Sherry. Good afternoon, educators. Thank you for being on the call today. I'm Kathy Manus, the Executive Director of Palmetto State Teachers Association, and I'm honored to be with you. We are in week 3 of our South Carolina public schools being closed. Our teachers are working harder than ever before to make sure our students continue to learn. I want to thank you for what you're doing every day. And I look forward to our conversation today with Superintendent Molly Spearman. Before I turn this over to Superintendent Spearman, I would like to ask a question of her to try to get this started and to thank you, Superintendent Spearman, for your leadership during this crisis. So I know yesterday you released guidance to schools and districts about grading and what is being done to ensure seniors are able to graduate on time. As you give us a little introduction, can you also include what are the key points for our teachers?
Well, thank you, Kathy and Sherry. Thank you so much for putting this call together, and for everyone who's joined in this afternoon. I want to add my appreciation and thank you to each of you for the work that you're doing. It has been so inspiring. Yesterday, I was on a conference call with the District Teachers of the Year. There were some 80 teachers on the call with Shonda Jefferson, our current State Teacher of the Year. And Shonda posed the question, so what are you feeling? And they all typed in the words and did a word wall. And I was watching that, and the first word, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger, was overwhelmed. And then as more words were added, the overwhelmed sort subsided, and the word grateful and optimistic became the key words. And it just took my breath away and made me so proud. I know you felt overwhelmed. I did as well. And sometimes that still creeps back in on me, but I've watched you put this emergency instruction plan together. I've watched you all assist our cafeteria workers and bus drivers deliver. We're up to 1.25 million meals served during these days. And I'm so grateful for what you're doing, and I'm optimistic that we're going to come out of this better people, better educators. Our students will be stronger. It's been hard, scary, all those things, but I know we're going to come out on the other side as better people. So just thank you for everything you're doing. As far as the guidance that we gave yesterday afternoon, I hope it will relieve some of the anxiety that you have been having, that our students have been having, parents, and particularly our seniors. And this took a lot of work. We included instructional leaders, we included teachers, superintendents, higher education folks in the final document. And the main points of it are this: for seniors, that seniors should have their work completed by May 15th. Grades should be in place in Power School by May 22nd. We started today with registration on an unlimited amount of credit recovery to help those students who may need to pass a course in order to graduate. And we also added numerous courses that we believe, from the information we've gotten from guidance counselors that students might need to graduate. Now, many districts are offering those as well. And so that registration will end on May 5th. The coursework starts on April 5th, and the courses start on April 6th. So we've got a lot of work to do in supporting our seniors to make sure that they graduate. But we hope that this will give time for those who are in dual credit courses to finish up. For students who are competing for valedictorian or scholarships, it will give them a chance to master their skills and show their proficiency. And for those students who might need remediation, this gives some time. For all other students, your calendar will be the same as what had planned to be. And so you'll follow that same schedule. Many folks have asked me, well, what about grading the work? And we were not real specific, except in high school. We said, yes, you need to do the numerical grades as usual because of scholarship competition. And there's some really good instruction going on, and we want students to have a chance to show their mastery and their proficiency. For other students, though, in grades kindergarten up through 8th grade, you'll be on a regular grading, however your district did those grades and whatever you all work out. I have suggested over and over to superintendents, though, that needs a really good dose of good old common sense. We don't want to punish students because of this type of instruction that we're doing if they have not done well with that or not had the opportunity as some may have had. So there are districts that are even choosing to say that students won't score any lower than they were at the close of the third 9 weeks, that this last session would be a time for them to improve their scores. That's left up to you as teachers and to your local district as to how you handle that. I should have mentioned, though, that in the high school grades, we are suggesting that the third 9 weeks and fourth 9-week grade third 9 weeks be used as an interim, and that we would enter a semester grade into Power School. So that is a change, but we thought that would be fair. So I think that hits the high points of it, Kathy, and of course I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can as we go through the call today.
Thank you, Superintendent Spearman. Throughout the call, we will conduct a number of poll questions to all participants. We will have 4 poll questions throughout today's call. Your responses will help the SCEA and PSTA and the superintendent to best serve our educators, our students, and families during this crisis. I think we can go ahead with our first poll question right now. Question number 1. Please select the statement which best describes your experience with leading distance or remote learning over the past 2 weeks. Please select the statement that best describes your experience leading distance or remote learning over the past 2 weeks. Push 1 if you have all the resources that you need to lead distance learning. Press 2 if you have sufficient resources to lead distance learning. Press 3 if you lack sufficient resources to effectively lead distance learning. 4, I have not been able to lead distance learning because of insufficient resources. So again, if you would take our poll question of distance learning, and 1, I have all the resources I need. 2, I have sufficient resources to lead. 3, I lack sufficient resources. Or 4, I have not been able to lead distance learning because of resources. And we look forward to getting your feedback on that question. And Kathy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sherry, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us. If you're just logging on, and if you have a question that you would like to ask at the Town Hall meeting with PSTA and SCEA, along with our Superintendent Molly Spearman, remember, you can press 9 at any time to ask a question. Wow, we have over 1,000 people who have already done our poll. And I know there are a lot of issues that are important to them. And thank you for participating in the poll. And I'd like to give you the answers that we have. So the question was the statement that describes your experience leading distant learning over the past 2 weeks. We had number 1, I have all the resources I need to lead distant learning. 34% of you said that you had the resources that you need. 49%, almost half of you said that you had significant resources. 14% of you said that you lack the sufficient resources, and 4% said that you've not been able to lead the distant learning. So right now we have 1,119 people who have participated in this poll, and thank you very much for that. So it looks like about half of you have the resources that you need, and I hope that that's going to continue. So it looks like we have some questions for Superintendent Spearman. So we have a question from Mary Rita. Mary Rita is from Somerville. So Mary Rita, would you ask your question of Superintendent Spearman, please?
Yes, ma'am. My question is, in an effort to do what is
Mary, I think we might have lost you for a minute. Or can you try that one more time, please?
teachers across the state are creating lessons for students that are both creative and meaningful, using both paper and digital modes. Can you ensure us that what we're doing to keep us making up this time later after this epidemic or the pandemic
Thank you, Mary Rita. I think I got that. Your question is basically teachers are doing some really great work. There's a lot of learning going on, and can I assure you that this instructional time will be counted? I can assure you with almost 99% confidence that it will. I was on a call this morning with many of the Senate leadership, and I've spoken with House leadership as well. This process to count the days is not something that I can do. I do not have that authority, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But since the 180-day requirement and the process for giving days is in statute, I cannot just say, wave my wand and say it's done. But I can tell you that I am strongly recommending to the General Assembly leadership, and I said it just like you said, there's a lot of extraordinary work going on. Every single district in the state turned in a plan to the Department of Education. We called for those when we saw the pandemic happening. We called for every district to send in an emergency instruction plan that was reviewed. It was similar to the e-learning pilot project group that had already been approved, but we, waived some of the requirements, like some of those because of the pencil paper issues. But each plan was approved, and my recommendation to the General Assembly is that if districts have implemented their instructional emergency plan, that all of the work that we are doing would count toward our 180 days. So that would mean no makeup days. And I can't say it with 100% certainty, but I feel so confident. The leaders who were on the phone today felt assured that that's what they wanted to see. I did have one member make some questions, but when they come back in session, and it appears that they will come back in at least one day to handle the budget and any emergency type of joint resolutions or work that they need to do to give us the flexibility that we need, that will be done on that day. So I think you all can relax in that. And again, I appreciate everything. I will, Kathy, if I could just go ahead. I meant to say in the opening remarks, I'm sure you all have heard about the regulations that we have already waived, particularly those that affect teachers. Number one that we haven't waived is the May 10th contract date. I've spoken with superintendents, and I think it's very important for you all to know for sure that you have a job for next year, and so we are not waiving the deadline for contracts to be back in, that they need to go out to you by May 1st, and that they be returned by May 10th so that you can have that certainty of a job for next year. We have waived the regulation on evaluations of teachers and said that if your principal had enough information that they felt comfortable with going ahead and completing your evaluation for this year, that they could do that. However, if there was not sufficient information, that could be extended into next year, or if you were on an improvement plan, that would be extended into next year as well. For recertification requirements, those of you whose recertification would end and you had to have your hours in by June 30th of 2020, we are extending that for a year. Now, if you've already done your work and you send it in to us, we'll go ahead and post it and you'll be done with it. But if you needed to still take a course, or you had not completed or cannot get your work in because of all this that's going on, you don't have to ask us for permission. Just know that it is being extended. You've got an extra year. If you got your work done and you want to send it to us, our analysts are working, and they will go ahead and re-up your recertification. But if you're not, that's one thing you can take off your plate to worry about. If you know any student teachers, that was another big question. What about the student teachers, those young people who are finishing up their senior year of college, doing their student teaching? We gave a waiver on that as well, so that will be handled on a case-by-case basis between the college or university and that student teacher. If the university felt that they had seen enough good work and can give a favorable passing to that teacher, they can certainly do that. If not, that person can still be hired in a district, but then would be given a provisional type certification, so that on good faith and showing their good work for that first year of teaching, then that they can be hired and go ahead and start working. So student teaching, the lack of that would not keep a candidate from being able to graduate or to get a job. And finally, you all know about the assessments, that all of the spring testing has been waived, and those extra courses like end of course test in history, biology, all of those have been waived, as well as English language proficiency exam, the 95% participation rate in those. Now, some districts had already given alternative assessments. We'll give out guidance on how that material would be sent back in, but I was able to do that waiver because it was in regulation, and of course the U.S. Department of Education gave that waiver as a precaution, and we're doing a lot of things out of an abundance of caution, though. We are going to ask the General Assembly to show their support for that when they return, so there could be no question about it. So I think that finishes my answer. That was a lot, but Mary Rita, I think you can rest comfortably that your instruction, everything you're doing now, is going to count toward our 180 days.
Okay. Thank you, Superintendent Spearman. And now we have a question from Kathy Hammett. Kathy, can you go ahead with your question, please?
Yes, my question is, has there been any communication with Internet and mobile service providers to accommodate students in government housing or other situations where they cannot access Internet for e-learning?
Kathy, that's a great question. Yes. And you can get all of that information on our website at ed.sc.gov. /COVID-19. Anything really dealing with any of these waivers, information for parents, for students, is all in that one spot, ed.sc.gov/COVID-19. I'm getting some feedback there, maybe with some music playing or something. Maybe somebody needs to mute their phone. But we have been working very closely with all of the internet service providers, and they are helping us to ensure that all students have access. We've worked with the national and the regional providers, and the list of all that information, most of it talking about free internet service for students, is on our website. We've sent that out to district superintendents so that they would have it. And I'm sure you've heard also all the buses that we have been buying since I've been in office, and that's about 3,000 new buses, are equipped to be hooked up on Wi-Fi. And we have several hundred of those that just in the last 3 weeks that we've been able to get working with AT&T to get Wi-Fi on those buses, and they are too being placed around communities where folks can go and have Wi-Fi service. So I'm sure there may be some spots and some families still not able to get access. So if you know any of those, if you would help them and look at that information. And as always, if there's any situation where you need a little personal attention, if you need our help, you can email me at SUPT at ed.sc.gov, and we'll have someone take a look and see if we can provide some extra assistance if needed.
Thank you, Superintendent Spearman, and thank you, Kathy, for that question. Remember, if you have a question out there, press 9 to raise your hand, and you will be able to talk to someone about your question. So now we're going to go on to our next question, and that is by Lorraine in Columbia, and she has a question for you, Superintendent Spearman. So, Lorraine Jackman, please ask your question.
My question was, since we are no longer giving the end of course exam for certain high school credit classes, will a final exam be put in its place?
Lorraine, that's a great question, and I think the instruction we've given to superintendents on final exams is that is a local district choice and really up to you and your principal and your policy there. We are certainly not requiring that from the state. If you feel comfortable that your students have gotten the new material and that there is a way that you can comfortably give an exam, that is up to you. But again, there are different levels of how this instruction's been delivered, and we're leaving that up to you all to use good common sense and work with your students there. So that would be left up to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Spearman. I know that was a question we've received from several folks that teach the EOC courses. Next, we have a question for Christy Lewis from Columbia. Christy, can you ask your question?
Sure. I have two. I read the information that came out, the 5 pages that came out yesterday in regards to the school day. But the question that I keep having from parents who have children on multiple levels, how much time should children be spending on work at home? And I know you've talked about it. I read what was on those 5 pages, but it's not clear. I've heard some 5th graders are working from 9 to 4, and then some middle school students have about 2.5, 3 hours, and the same for high school. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll just tell you how this all came out. You all probably realize that the legislature we're in our 2nd year of having a pilot project going on with some districts who were able to do tele-distance learning. And it really was set up for snow days, a day here, a day there. And there were parameters, and that was being managed by the Education Oversight Committee. And so I believe there were 13 to 15 districts who were already in. There were 5 districts the first year, then they added some more. And so those districts were pretty well equipped. And the parameters that were set up for that, in order for them not to have to make up a snow day or whatever, hurricane day, whatever, was that the students should show 3.5 hours of instruction. So I'll tell you, when we got into this in a hurry and did our parameters for, we needed all districts to submit an emergency plan, we used that same, very similar criteria. So I think most everyone turned in something that said, here's how we're going to do 3.5 hours instruction. Shortly after starting this, within a day or two, I tell you, I'm sure you all got it too, I started getting emails from frantic parents saying, oh my goodness, you got to be kidding. I'm working all day, coming home, and then I've got to cook and spend 3.5 hours with my 6-year-old. And I think that was unrealistic. I really do. So I immediately talked with the superintendents and our staff, and I said, we got to back off of this. This is just not common sense here. And so I've asked folks just to rethink that. We have not given any particular guidance. We may need to do that. I know now that I've seen several states have come out. I know some districts, just common sense wise, and I'm just going to throw some numbers out here. This is not the law or anything, but probably 20 to 30 minutes for a kindergartner. Maybe a little longer for a first, second grader, 30, 35, 40 minutes, and then maybe an hour for third, fourth, fifth graders and up. So I think if we need to come back out with something like that, we may do that, but that's what I have talked verbally with the superintendents about, that we needed to, since we're in this for the long haul, and I think we were being very zealous in the beginning, and none of us thought that this was going to go on this long. But I think that's something that we do need to rethink and just really have good old common sense on. So as I've talked to principals, as I've talked to superintendents, that's what I've been saying to them. So it may be something that we will decide that we will have to come out with something definitely. I wanted to have the credibility when I went to the legislature to say, look, every district has turned in a plan and they're implementing that. But at the same time, I was one of the first, I think, and probably you all too, realizing maybe we were a little bit overambitious in what we asked students to do. So I would just say go back to good old common sense and developmentally appropriate time work is how we should work this. But great question.
Thank you. Thank you for your question, Christy, and thank you, Superintendent Spearman. This is all new to us, and we're learning together. So right now, I'd like to introduce our second poll question. So everybody ready? The governor closed South Carolina schools on March the 15th. And since that time, what portion of your students have you had communication? Have you been able to communicate with? So what portion of your students have you been able to communicate with? Press 1 if it's all of my students. Press 2 if it's 75 to 99% of my students. Press 3 if it's 50 to 74% of my students. Press 4 if it's 25 to 49% of my students. Press 5 if it's less than 25% of my students. And I sure hope nobody's going to press 6. But if you haven't been able to communicate with any of your students, press 6. So again, what portion of your students have you had the opportunity to communicate with? 1, press 1 for all of my students. Press 2 if you've communicated with 75 to 99% of your students. Press 3 if it's been 50 to 74% of your students. Press 4 if it's 25 to 49% of your students. Press 5 if it's less than 1/4 of your students. And press 6 if it's none of my students. So I see we have over 800 responses on our poll. I look forward to seeing how that's going to go. Remember, if you have a question, and we've had some great questions so far, if you have some questions, press 9. So I'm going to give you just a couple of more seconds to vote, and then we'll talk about the answers on our poll question. So go ahead and vote. All right. Of the almost 1,000 votes, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say great job, Kathy, on that question. I'm seeing a lot of interesting responses.
Okay. So, Sherry, you want me to go ahead and talk about what the poll result is, or would you like to share that?
I can do it if you'd like. It's so far we've received 960 votes for that great question, and for number 1 that have contacted 100% of their students, we have 16% have heard from 100%. 44% have heard from 75 to 99% of their students. 20% responded with a 50 to 74%. 12% are the 25 to 49%. 8% of our callers have less than 1/4, and only 1% have not heard from any of their students. So I think that's remarkable as we're doing this new remote learning, and we appreciate the feedback. A reminder to press 9 if you would like to get a call in, and to press mute if you're not speaking to us directly at the time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you to so many who did participate in that poll. Next, we have a question from Natalie. So, Natalie, would you ask your question to Superintendent Spearman, please?
I don't quite know how to put this pretty quick, but you had said about final exams that that's kind of up to the local schools to decide, but we're being told that we're not supposed to be introducing new material while we're away from school because of the accommodations that are not being provided for students in a special education setting or the like. And I guess that's a little bit hard when you've only taught half a semester. How can you give a final exam when half of the material won't be covered? And that's where I think there's a disconnect, because the Department of Ed is saying one thing from your point of view, and we're getting this.
Well, very good question. And I will go back. I have a call on tomorrow with all the district superintendents. We were doing that every day, but we're up to a place now where we're doing it twice. We started this week twice a week. And I do need to clarify that. I think in the very beginning, when we weren't sure how long we were going to be out, there was some direction about not doing new material, that it would be reflective kind of work. But I think that has changed, and we do have districts that are very capable of doing new instruction, and many of them are doing that. So I'm not sure which district you are in, but I will go back over that again with superintendents. There is a disparity, absolutely. There's a disparity in those that can, as you heard just in those numbers just now, where some folks are 100% being able to contact all of their students, and then down to 1 or 2 who can't do any. So we need to take that in consideration, but I think for the length of time that we've been out, and I don't want to hold people back, if they're able to give some new instruction, that they can do that. So I'll work on clarifying that to see if we can get all of our districts doing the same kind of thing, if possible.
Thank you, Superintendent Spearman. Our next call is one I think a lot of people have been asking. It's from Jessica in Aiken. So, Jessica, go ahead with your call, with your question.
Hi. I just hear you giving dates for seniors for May 15th, and I'm just wondering if we're still hoping to come back on May 1st, or if we're kind of planning on being down until the end of the year now.
Well, Jessica, I'll be as honest with you and all as I can be. The governor and I have talked about the school closing. You know, we all want children to be in school. We know how important this is, and we know the burden that it places on families and on you and our students when we're closed. So we've tried really hard to make those decisions and wait as long as we can to make that decision, just hoping and praying that things might get better. The governor went ahead with this, to the end of April. We're looking at it very closely. The executive orders are good for 15 days. Something I've learned in this, I thought an executive order could just be handed down and it was good forever until it needed to be undone, but that's not true. They're good for 15 days. So we're already several days into this executive order, and when it ends, I think, which will be sometime, probably around April 10th. I don't have that exact date on the tip of my tongue, but I think at that point we will have a very, very clear picture. I think all of us looking at the situation, unless there's some tremendous change in the situation and things would start de-escalating instead of escalating and accelerating, if that would happen, maybe we could go back. But with the procedure right now, and we seem to be in acceleration, that it's going to be very difficult. But the official call will not be made until we get some further guidance, and I'm guessing probably about mid-April, maybe a little before then, would an official announcement be made. So but I, like you, and I think all of you can look at it, this is not looking good. And, I don't want to say 100% anything, but I'm saying it's not looking good. But the official announcement won't be made for a while. And some of that, if I could just add, is psyche. You could say, who knows what's going to even happen this summer. We're hoping to have our summer reading camps in place, but we really just don't know. And we're taking this kind of day by day, weeks by week. But for the governor, as far as executive orders, it's in about a 2-week, 15-day time frame.
All right, Jessica, that was a great question, and I know we're all worried about. We all want to get back to school with our students, so thank you for that question, and thank you, Superintendent Spearman. We have a lot of questions coming in dealing with special ed. I know I'm a parent of a special ed student, and my son, and I have some questions myself. So we're going to go to Heather Kraft right now, and she has a question about special ed for you, Superintendent Spearman. So Heather, would you ask your question? Heather, are you with us? Okay, she was holding for a while, so maybe we missed her. Let's see if I can find another one here dealing with special ed. How about Kathleen Archina from Columbia? Kathleen, can you hear me? Okay. Well,
Kathy, I'll be glad. I can just talk a little bit about special ed.
Okay. I think she might be on Superintendent. Let's see if she might be on. Kathleen, were you able to get on? All right. Well, Superintendent Spearman, can you just talk about special ed? One question was, how are they going to do, how are they expected to keep up with the service time and requirements of the IEP? Or just anything in general you'd like to talk about the many special ed teachers that we have on this call today?
Well, thanks, Kathy, and that has been a huge concern for me and for our staff at the Department of Education. We are working very, very closely with the U.S. Department of Education as they are giving guidance. We're contracting with Able, South Carolina, to provide online support. we know that, yes, we all as teachers, educators, we need to be documenting any type of service, any type of conversations we're having with parents to make sure that we have that information. We have placed quite a bit of information on the SCEA website. That same ed.sc.gov, go to special education, the Office of Special Education Services site on how services can be provided, resources related to COVID-19, how teleservice updates that we have, social emotional support, use of virtual service delivery. There's a form stack link on COVID-19 website for the submission of questions, frequently asked questions that our staff are working with. We are having weekly calls with the local education, with your school districts and your special education directors regarding how to deliver services. We know some of this is going to have to be made up time when we can start meeting again face-to-face, that we'll have to do some additional face-to-face time. But I think for now we need to really be communicating with parents, send out notices of any type of contingency learning plan, documentation, as I said before. Obviously, this is not ideal for our students with very special needs, but and we've got to be as creative as possible. But I would just direct our special education teachers to go to that website, to be working very closely with their directors, who in turn are working with our folks, so that we can provide access. There's a National Technical Assistance Center information. I'm looking at this for the Early Childhood Technical Assistance Center and the National Center for Systematic Improvement. These two national centers are designated by the U.S. Department of Education Special Education Office to coordinate information. So there are places for us to go, and we're trying to do the best we can now, and which we know is not ideal and perfect, and we're probably going to have to, over the summer and when we all can be healthy and together again, make up a lot of these services.
Okay, that was great, Superintendent Spearman. Sherry, do you have our next caller with a question?
Well, I'm actually going to go to our next poll question right now, and then we'll get back to a caller. And our poll question, our third poll question says this: by order of the governor, South Carolina schools will remain closed through at least the end of April. During this time, which of the following sources are of significant concern for you? So we're just asking you, what is most concerning for you at this point? So press 1 if student learning and academics is your most important concern at this time. Press 2 if student social and emotional well-being is your biggest concern. Press 3 if financial and food insecurities for students and their families is your biggest concern. Press 4 if your capacity for resources to lead this type of learning is your biggest concern. Press 5 for the need for professional development on how to conduct effective distance learning. Press 6 if the level of expectation and requirements for teachers during this time of distance learning is your most significant concern. Again, choose 1 if your biggest concern is student learning and academics. 2, social emotional well-being of students. 3, financial and food insecurities of students and families. 4, your capacity to have resources to lead distance learning. 5, the need for professional development for how to conduct distance learning. And 6, the level of expectations and requirements for teachers during this time of distance learning. So if you could please answer our poll questions. We're up to over 500, almost 600 people have answered that question. It's a long, maybe thoughtful question, and I'll let Kathy go over the answers with you on that question, and then I'll get back to our next question in the queue. We'll give you a couple more minutes.
All right. Looks good. So this is talking about the concern that you have. We've had over 800 people to answer the poll. So the 21% of you say that student learning and academics is a concern for you. 39%, and that's our largest, says that our students' social and emotional well-being is a significant concern for you, and I can understand that because as educators, we all care about the well-being of our students. So 39% of you, student social and emotional well-being. Number 3, 22% of you say that the financial and food insecurity of the students and the family is a concern to you. Number 4, 3% you are concerned about the capacity and resources for distant learning. Number 5, 4% feel that need for professional development. And number 6, 11% are very concerned about the level of expectations and requirements for the teachers. So again, over 800 of you voted for the poll. Thank you for doing that. And I think we're going to continue with our questions. Superintendent
Kathy,
Spearman, we have one. Yes.
if I may, because that was such an
Sorry.
important question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you, Molly.
If I may just make a comment, because that was the poll questions have been outstanding and really giving good information to all of us, and I will use this as we go forward. But I did want to share with you, because I have those concerns. I would say for me, probably I would have answered number 2, the social, emotional health of our students, because this is scary times and just a lot of things. And for some children, we know that being at school is their safest place, and you all are the eyes and the ears for children who don't have, those few that don't have the best home life and who feel secure being with you. I've had a meeting with Department of Mental Health folks and also DSS, and I wanted to share with you all that the DSS folks are very, very concerned about this, because they say the same thing. We depend on our teachers, our school folks, to help us with those children that we need to be reaching out to who may be in an abusive situation. And they wanted me to remind all educators that their hotlines are still open. There's telephone numbers that you all call to report suspicious activity. And I know that you know which children you would have concerns about that you work with, and if there are issues, if you've not been able to reach a child and for whatever reason that may seem suspicious, or you have that gut feeling, please reach out to your DSS folks, because they are still working. They are still making house calls as needed. For mental health folks, we have some resources they've shared with us on our website, how to talk with your children about COVID-19. They are still continuing. They have 18,000 students that they are still serving through telepsychiatry. That's still going on. The Medicaid reimbursement, we've been working on that so that we could have more students qualify. So just know that there are services that are still ongoing, and if you have children that you're especially concerned about, you should reach out to your mental health regional folks or to DSS. And the other part of it is that the federal government has passed a tremendous stimulus bill and funding. South Carolina is going to get, at least at the Department of Education, through to us, will become some $216 million, we know. Most of that will be channeled out to districts. And it is to help pay for some of the services, things that you've just talked about, from mental health support to summer learning, how to support school leaders, how to coordinate your emergency response, purchasing cleaning supplies, education technology. So some of the things that you all have just said are your concerns. There is funding that will be coming through, and we anticipate having that probably by the end of in the next month or so. Don't know the exact timetable, they're working out those parameters at the U.S. Department of Education. But there will be some funding coming in to your districts to help with some of these concerns.
Thank you,
Molly.
Superintendent.
Hi. Our next question is going to be from Katrina Hayes in Mountain Rest. And her question, a lot of folks are in the queue to ask questions about our CATE education, technical and career college programs, and not only that, but our elective programs, Molly. So I'll let Katrina answer, then you may have some additional things to add about our elective bands, those hard to do remotely classes. So Katrina, how about your question?
Thank you for taking my question. This time of the year, we have tons of reports that are mandated and linked to our Perkins federal funding that we have to do. They're very in-depth reporting, and I just wanted to know, is there a plan in place to have those reports suspended because it ties into our funds for next year, and it could just be devastating because we haven't been able to finish certifications and lots of other work. I'm sure there's a plan, but I just would really like to hear it.
Right. Well, thanks for the question. I know Angel Malone, who is the director of CATE for us, has been putting memos up on our website. You probably need to check there. I know Ryan Brown is on the call with me, and he may have some additional information that I don't have. But I will tell you, most all of the reports that are due to the State Department of Education, the deadlines have been extended, and there are a list of those on the website, and as new dates come up, we're extending those. Since this is a federal a report that we get and then we send on probably to feds, and even they are giving extensions as well. So I'm going to be real careful in how I answer this, but if you shoot me an email to that EdSoup, EDSUPT, at ed.sc.gov, EdSoup at ed.sc.gov, we will get that to you. Now, Ryan is saying, and that's what I thought, there is, on our website is a /COVID-19 site, and all the memos that have been sent out to superintendents and all the information that we're getting, that's where everything is collected. So you could go to ed.sc.gov /COVID-19, and you will see the information there. If that doesn't give you what you need, Katrina, please shoot me an email, and we'll try to get that specifically answered for you.
Thank you, Molly.
Okay, thanks,
Katrina.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Kathy,
thank you for your question. Yeah, and thank you, Superintendent Spearman. I know we have a good many college seniors who are in the middle of their student teaching. And, Molly, we have a question from Mindy Hendricks. So, Mindy, are you on the line to ask your question? Mindy, are you there? Okay, maybe we lost her. But let me ask you this, Superintendent Spearman.
Okay.
Mindy and many others are recently or have graduated or getting ready to graduate, and they need to take the praxis, but it has been delayed. So how is that going to affect her job hunt?
Well, we have extended, this is another thing that we were able to do. Anyone who is in her situation, who's not been who are graduates, they're in good standing, graduating, everything's done. I mentioned the student teaching already, but in this case, praxis, they will be eligible candidates to get a job, and they can be hired. We will give them a provisional certificate for 1 year. It's a 1-year temporary certificate option. They've completed all their requirements of a state-approved educator preparation program, with the exception of one or more certification assessments required by state board. And they can be hired, and then they'll have 1 year to take those tests and move into full certification status. So that's something we knew could be a problem. So I hope that will ease the frustration and anxiety for them.
That is great, Superintendent Spearman. And I know Mindy and many of the other student teachers who had their experiences cut short are very glad to hear that. So I think Sherry has our next person.
Hey, my next question is from Sally in Aiken, South Carolina. Sally has a question that I've heard many times and had many calls about myself. So Sally from Aiken, go ahead with your question. Well, I don't know if Sally got disconnected, but Sally's question, and I've received many of this, is we're accepting paper packets back from our students. What is the safe protocol on accepting the work? Should we wait a while in case it was contaminated? And what is the deadline on grading and such if we're using the paper packet method? Are there any guidelines, Molly, that you've come up with on accepting the paper packet?
Well, I've gotten that question a lot, and I actually posed that question to Dr. Linda Bell. I'm sure you've all seen her on TV. I'm so impressed with her, the state epidemiologist, and she's done a wonderful job. And I asked her, I said, so what, are we in danger of accepting these packets back from homes all around the state? And this was her answer. She said you need to use good sanitary practices. Probably the virus would not live, for long on the papers, but still, if you want to accept those with gloves or just after you've managed them, just do a really good hand washing like you should probably be doing any time. But again, I think with the acceptance of those papers, again, just using good common sense. I think we do need to receive the work. I think we need to make a good faith effort to look at it, and if grading is the right thing, but just for that trust and that relationship that we have with our students, that if they're going to spend time working on it, we're going to take a little time to look at it and appropriately grade it or check it or whatever. But my advice would just be just wash your hands really good afterwards. Use some hand sanitizer, don't touch your face, and probably ought to be doing that all the time. I was real happy to learn today. I kind of figured this, but Dr. Bell reported today to us that the infections across the United States, while, yes, there's more COVID-19, but at the same time, things like flu and other infectious diseases, those are down because people are doing a much better job with social distancing and washing their hands. So this is good stuff for us to use all the time.
Good. Thank you, Molly. We need to continue to remind one another to wash our hands, don't touch our face, and hopefully we're going to get this virus out of South Carolina.
That's right.
So the next question we have is from Roxanne from Jonesville, South Carolina. So, Roxanne, are you on to ask Superintendent Spearman a question?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me? My question is, I'm a high school art teacher, and I think that some of the parents feel like my class is not as important as other classes. So I'm getting some rebellion from parents, actually. And is there any suggestions, or is there anything that's going out to parents from the state, suggesting that the kids try to stay engaged for a short amount of time? I'm not really sending anything complex. I'm just trying to make them accountable.
Well, thank you, Roxanne. And I'm a former music teacher, so I'm guessing maybe our choral folks and music folks may be having the same issue, but nothing formal that we sent out other than, if you've heard me in the press conferences and TV interviews and things that I've done, is I've tried to speak to parents to say, look, stay calm, enjoy this time, work with your children, learn. There are a lot of ways students can learn. And I've said to students, but students, you need to do your work and do the best you can with it. Try hard. This is important. So I'll keep saying that, and I'll try to throw in a little word to art and music students as well. I've been working with the Governor's School, both of our Governor's School Science and Math and their arts program in Greenville. Both of their both of their schools are residential, as you know, and those students have been sent home just like the universities. But it has been remarkable, particularly at the Governor School for Arts and Humanities, how they've been able to do music and drama and writing with their students through their distance learning. Even the professors grading the work while the students perform. So I was really pleasantly surprised how they can do that. So I don't know if you have that capability in Jonesville, or at least maybe they could take a picture of their artwork and send it to you on Facebook. I don't know, but good luck to you. And I count you as being very important. Please know that.
Hey, Molly, yes, we can't underestimate the arts. That's a lot of reasons why children go to school. We have a question from Charlene Walker about some programs that we look forward to in the spring, such as graduation, proms, those annual events. And I will go to Charlene now to ask her question. Charlene, are you there? Well, Charlene's question says, wondering what the plan is for seniors. Is there any type of graduation ceremonies that are going to take place?
I hope so. I've had several heart-wrenching emails from students around the state who say, Ms. Spearman, please let us come back to school. I want to see my mother's face when I walk across the stage and get my diploma. Can't get much more important than that, but that will be a district decision, and I hope people will be very creative. It may have to be delayed. That's not something that we would direct from the Department of Education, other than just encouraging folks to if in any way possible, if we all are healthier and the pandemic has lessened, that sometime over the summer that some type of ceremony could be held. Or maybe there's some very creative virtual way they can do it. But I certainly hope so, but that would be left up to the individual schools and districts.
Yes, thank you, Molly. And we sure hope that those students can get in and graduate and have their proms and just enjoy the fun part of high school. And those little ones just don't like staying home. They want to be there to see their students, their friends. So I'm hoping we're going to get back. All right.
Right.
I have another question, if it's okay. And this is a special question from Deborah in Hopkins. So, Deborah, are you still on the call? Well, we've had a good problem. We've had a lot of people call in to ask questions, and they've had to stay on for a while. So maybe she wanted to hang up so she could listen.
Yeah.
So, again, I think you've talked a little bit about the special ed. She's a resource teacher and just wanted some information to help with the instruction for her large number of students. And so I think, do you have something on the webpage, Superintendent Spearman, that she could go to?
Yes, under our Office of Special Ed and resources there, I think you could find some ideas. But again, I know that there are just so many different circumstances that it's difficult for us to plan and to talk about each one. But there are, look again on our website and go to that COVID-19 area, and you should find some resources there for resource teachers and ideas. I think any type of supplemental material that you can send out. And I wanted just to address, again, I know through technology some of you are able to have Zoom meetings with your students and just some really cool things, and others may not have that capability. But, I hope that at least get the phone numbers of your parents and try to reach out to your parents and at least give them a phone call would be tremendous, and a way maybe even just to speak to your students over the phone or through Facebook. I've been watching Twitter and Facebook and just seeing all the different things that teachers are doing, and I know there's circumstances that make it harder, but I would hope that everybody, at least through getting the cell phone numbers of your parents, that you could at least maybe not speak to the student, but you could at least call your parents. I know they would greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent Spearman. We appreciate your leadership, and I think we've been on that over an hour now. So, do you have some closing remarks you'd like to share?
Well, a couple things. Big thank you. I'm inspired by what you all are doing. Thank you for hanging in there. I know that it's tough to leave your families and go back to school and work. I know folks are nervous. I'm nervous about leaving my house and having to go to the Emergency Preparedness Center there in Columbia. I take a Clorox wipe in my hand and just try to be extra, extra careful. So I hope that you all will be doing that. There's no doubt that you are very, very essential. This has showed us how essential our healthcare workers are and how essential our educators are. And with that, though, I want you all to take care of yourself. Get plenty of rest, meditate, keep your mind, body, and spirit as healthy as you can, and we will get through this. This is historic for us in our lifetime. I don't think my father, who died at 92, never went through anything like this. I know he told me about his mother telling him about the flu pandemic of 1918, but we've not really had anything like that since this time. So we are living in a time that will go down in history, and we're making it up, a lot of it, as we go through, but we've got to all try to stay healthy in all ways, and I appreciate you, and if there's any way that we can support you better, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And thank you for setting up this call. This has been so helpful to me, and I want to get a copy of those poll questions because that's information that I can use as I talk with the General Assembly.
Thank you, Molly. And I will say I do appreciate so much you taking the time to be with us today. And through this for the past 3 weeks, have had an open door policy with the SCEA, and anytime I've called or reached out to you or Ron, you've been very grateful we've been grateful that you take our calls and work through it with us and even let us preview some things before they get sent out to get teacher input. So I think it's important for our membership and teachers to know that you are seeking the input of teachers and educators as we go through this together. And I would like to ask everybody on the call to remind you to stay in touch with your associations. Let us know what you need. We have a wealth of resources available to you, and just don't want to overload or overwhelm you when you're navigating this, but please reach out, and if we can continue to support you, we will be glad to do that. And the final remarks are from Kathy with PSTA.
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you for everyone for being on this call today. We have had almost 4,000 teachers on the call, so thank you for joining it. It has been a great opportunity for PSTA and SCEA members to have questions that are important to them answered, and a big thank you to Superintendent Molly Spearman. This is a time of uncertainty for our teachers, our students, and our parents. And I am very proud to have Molly Spearman as our Superintendent of Education. I thank you for your leadership. I thank you for always putting students and teachers first. This is hard for everybody, but I'm glad to know that you are our leader. So thank you, Molly. Thank you for spending almost an hour and a half of your day today answering these questions. And I want to thank you, teachers, for what you are doing every single day. It's hard. I know it is. But I want to thank you for what you're doing to help your students continue to learn. Hang in there, and together we're going to get through this. Thanks again for all you do. Everyone have a great day today. Thanks for being on. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.